Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Zero to Play podcast. I'm your host, Carla Duke, and today I'll be talking with Lorien Gugich. Lorien is one of New Zealand's top streaming personalities. She has been Twitch partner for over 5 years and appeared in articles from the New Zealand Herald and Stuff and all the big New Zealand publications. She's recently pivoted into game development and is now focusing on her new venture, Chromatic Pie Games, which is a studio on a mission to create inclusive, diverse, and accessible games. So today I'll be talking to Laurie about her new company, streaming, being a streamer in New Zealand, her son and how her son has affected her perspective of games, and yeah, just all things game development. So thanks for joining me today, Lorien.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's very exciting.
Yeah, no, there's a lot that I want to get into. I don't know if we're going to cover every topic, but just to go right back to the beginning, and we can kind of go chronologically, because I know you've streaming was a big part of your career, and then you went into the gaming industry, and then now you're being an entrepreneur and opening your business. So going way back, what was your earliest memory of games? Like, what was your first game that you remember playing growing up?
The first game I remember playing, I believe, was Sonic, and that was on the Sega Master System 2, which I still have, by the way. It's got its own shelf down in my lounge with all these other Sega games there. So that was the Sonic game that was on the system itself. That's not my first game, but my first sort of memories of gaming were with my dad, and he was a gamer as I was growing up, and he would play like Doom, Half-Life, Quake, and I remember
Wow.
just watching him when I'd spend time with him and being really interested in, what's going on this computer screen. It's crazy.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool that he was into games when you were growing up. I feel like that was the anomaly back then. And like a
Mm,
lot of my friends growing up, like none of their parents, gaming was a very frowned upon industry, really.
yeah.
How, I guess, how did you start in streaming? So you played games. A lot of us play games growing up, but going into streaming is actually quite like a big step. And there's a few questions I have
Yeah.
about streaming, but what was that journey like?
Well, I guess for me, video games for me were always something that, um, because I gamed so much growing up, it was something I did in my own spare time when I was by myself. I didn't game too much with other people growing up. It was mostly just like a solitary thing for me. So I did that, and then I stumbled across a YouTube channel called The Rad Brad. He's this like really entertaining, amazing content creator, and he doesn't have a camera, and he's just so like animated and funny. And so I was watching his playthrough of I think it was, gosh, there was quite a few. There's DayZ, I think it was the first series I watched of his anyway. So I went from DayZ to all these other titles, and I didn't have the latest gen consoles at the time, so it was all these games that I couldn't play. And I was going through a rough patch, and he just made me feel happier. He was entertaining, it made me laugh. And then I thought, you know what? I love to game. I think I can be pretty entertaining, and I kind of want to do that, what he's doing, and do this for other people. So that's really where it started for me. I started on YouTube, and I did a let's play of South Park.
Nice.
And that was my first one. And after that, I had discussions with friends, and they said, Twitch is live streaming, and I didn't know about Twitch. I checked it out briefly for 2 months, and then decided that I think that's a better fit for me, being live. And so I streamed on the 10th of January, I think. Oh gosh, I missed my 6-year anniversary. It reminds me, my 6-year anniversary of streaming was earlier this month.
Congrats.
Um, Thank you. Yeah, there's so much going on in the world at the moment. But yeah, and it just sort of flowed through, and I really enjoyed interacting with people while I was live. Didn't have a camera initially, but yeah, I just loved it, and it just sort of just went from there.
That's so cool. I have so much respect for streamers because you have to stick to a schedule. You need to be consistent. You need to build.
Yeah.
You just need to be kind of always present for your community online.
Yeah.
What advice do you have? Because that requires a lot of self-discipline, or like time management. What advice would you give to someone that wants to start streaming and have like a regular schedule? Like, what were the main issues you had, and advice you could give?
I think for me, I think passion always comes into being a great motivator
Mm,
for things like discipline. So for me, I was very passionate about streaming and being relevant and being reliable. So I would say getting into streaming, you kind of need to have that passion to like really drive you forward. If you don't have that passion for the industry, for entertaining, then you're going to find it quite difficult. I think getting into streaming for money, it's not always going to work out that way. A lot of these content creators that are popular nowadays have come from a humble beginnings of just having this like immense love for video games and for community. Um, Unless they're a pro esports player or
mhm,
something which is viable. But yes, I would say being consistent, having a schedule that people can rely on. And it's okay if you're within like an hour of going live, but generally if you're late or unreliable, people will drop off and go find somewhere else.
mhm,
I would say also just being yourself. What I found for me is being my authentic self made me feel good about the content I was putting out there. There was no pressure to be somebody else, which I know that people can have a struggle with. And I think those are like really the key things that I would say.
mhm,
And video gaming wise, what I've always said is I started with Destiny. And so I immersed myself into the Destiny community.
mm,
And then I went to variety streaming after that because my community sort of followed me from there. So I would say stick with one game first. And then if you do want to do variety, trickle on after the fact so your community can grow with you. It's harder to
mm.
go variety if you don't have that community there.
I think you've done a great job of building a community around your brand and your streaming. And uh, how has that process been? Has it been hard at times, or has it always been just kind of a friendship that you've had with your community?
Um, I would say that, yeah, being a part of the Destiny community from the conception of my streaming career has been the basis of which everything else has sort of flourished from. The Destiny community, even to this day, we're so tight knit. We're so supportive of one another. The money that I earned from streaming in the early days, in the first 2 years, I would say, I flew to America quite a lot for TwitchCon, for other gaming conventions, and that's where I got to physically meet a lot of these other content creators that I had made friendships with. And then we also met other people in our communities that were watching a lot of us.
Mm,
And so it was like, webbing out into this thing that was so much bigger than just us by ourselves. And so for me, networking became a huge part of my career. And um, for me, launching Chromatic Pi, which I'm sure we can talk about later, yeah, I don't think Chromatic Pi would have been able to happen if I hadn't had my streaming career be as successful as it has been.
totally, yeah. I think you having streaming, being a successful streamer as a backbone is a huge asset. Going into making it sets you apart in a completely unique way, which I'm sure you'll bring to your games. So being a streamer is one thing, but you stepped into game development after that. I believe you worked as a community manager and then a producer. Is that right? Or what was your
Yes.
experience in game development, and why did you jump into game development? Because usually those things are very separate. The gaming industry and then the game development industry are two very different things.
Yeah. So they're all sort of in the same sort of pool, but yeah, they're in like different areas. But For me, I got pregnant in 2017 and had my son in September 2017. And so I was streaming less, I was less consistent, for obvious reasons. And so that sort of made me step back a little bit and think, where can I go to from here? So it took me, I think, about 2 years after I had my son, where I sort of was like, you know what, I've been playing my games on the hardest difficulty for a long time. I have an immense interest in game design now because of that, with the mechanics and systems and whatnot. And so for me, I just was like, you know what, I think I might just try and get a job in the industry as a community manager, since I have a lot of experience with growing communities and being a part of communities. And so I put a tweet out there. That's really how it began, was I just put a tweet out there saying, hey, I'm looking for a community management job. And so someone at A44 Games reached out to me, and I had an interview and they liked me. So I became a remote community manager for them for a while. Which was brilliant. It gave me a sense of security, financial security for my son. And I still streamed that time as well, because I just love streaming. But yeah, then one day they reached out to me and were like, hey, we think you'd be a great fit for a producer. And so then that started me having to move to where I am now, move from
Wow.
Napier to the Wellington region to do that. And yeah, it's crazy how that sort of how it's all happened, really.
Nice. So you've announced Chromatic Pie Games. Are you in development yet? Like, what stage is that in, and where? Because I know there was discussions of where it was going to be based, if it was going to be kind of remote, or if you're going to go back to Napier. Are you any further on those decisions?
Yeah, I like to be quite transparent with my community on Twitter. People are really invested in my journey, because I've had adversities, I've had success, and it's just life. So I like to have people follow along. But for the meantime, I have decided to stay in the Wellington region. I've moved a lot around the country, and I even moved to America for a short while. And I think I'm so used to being on the go that I really need to be like, no, just stay in one spot, settle down, knuckle down, and do the thing.
Yeah.
So that's what I've officially decided to do, is just really knuckle down. Of course, I miss my family in Napier, but I can just drive up and see them. But Chromatic Pi is at the moment, I am developing the game as much as I can, so I can be ready to hire people and just be like, hey, this is where I'm at, show them my documentation that I currently have, and let the magic happen from there. So before we get to that point, hiring people, at the moment I'm trying to find and secure funding, which I am having some really wonderful success in at the moment, which is I'm very grateful.
That's awesome.
Very, very grateful. Aside from that, just business side, getting the Chromatic Pi logo trademarked, which that's very exhaustive. You get lawyers to do this sort of thing. But I was like, you know what? No, I think I can do this and save a bit of money. But yeah, I've also applied to enroll myself into Creative HQ's Lightning Lab, which is in their incubation program, which goes from 3 to 12 months. And what I want to do is, of course, I want to make games, but I also want to ensure that I'm a great business leader. I'm going to be a great entrepreneur. Really want to support myself on this journey so that the studio can be as successful as I want it to be.
That's cool. I love it. I love that you're coming from you're kind of taking that passion into making a company as well. It's not transactional. It's not, you're not kind of tapping into the market because there's an opportunity right now. You're doing it for the love, and you're going to see kind of where that goes. What I love the most is you kind of branded the company as one that's diverse, inclusive, and there was a third third word, accessible.
Yes.
So I really admire that, and I'd love to know a bit more about that mission. And first of all, are there any games that you feel like really reflect that in the industry at the moment, or do you think it's kind of an area that's not developed enough?
I think that when I sort of realized that I do have that sort of entrepreneurial trait was that I saw the issues in the game development industry across the globe, and it is, there is a lack of diversity and lack of um, inclusion and being like bold about being inclusive. And then, of course, accessibility needs a lot of work. We can innovate immensely in the accessibility area. And so I saw these issues and I was like, you know what? If there's one thing I can do, if I am going to create a studio, I want it to be about these issues. I want to bring them to the forefront. I want to um, try and make the game industry a better place, really. So other people can sort of jump on board or be more inspired to jump on board, because there's all these game studios around the globe, and they may be inclusive, have diverse folk on their teams, and have a little bit of accessibility in their games. But I think we really need to build up that the marketing around this, um, bring these stories of people that have sort of struggled in the industry, and really listen. And so that's really why I went on this mission.
That's cool. No, I love it. I wanted to ask you this question actually while I was doing research on you, and I'd love to know how Leon, because he's what, 2 years old now?
He's actually 3.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So he's 3 years old. He's getting older. I would love to know how him being in your life and seeing him grow up has affected or has changed your perspective on games, and kind of compared to how you felt with games growing up, because the industry is changing so much and just gaming in general is evolving. What is your current stance on? I don't know. Does he play games? Where do you think that limit? How far you take that limit to playing games?
Well, I think, yeah, being a parent and a mother, it really does change how you see the world around you, and you do start to think of someone other than yourself. And at least that's the way I see it. So my son, he's 3 now. I actually just bought a second PS5 controller because we were playing Sackboy: A New Adventure on the PlayStation 5, and highly recommend that video game, by the way. It's my favorite of 2020.
Awesome.
It's so good, so impressive. Love it. So we've been playing that game. It's a very family friendly game, and he absolutely loves it. He's this little sack boy that can like run around and do stuff. And so there's some levels on there where you need 2 players. You can do all of the other levels with 2 people as well. But so I got the PS5 controller and we were playing over the weekend. And it was just, seeing him learn, he knows what buttons to press, and he's only 3. And it's crazy. Yeah, I don't think I was that adept when I was a 3-year-old watching my dad play video games. There's this current generation being raised, they're just so much more like tech ready and like smart, and just, they're growing up with iPads,
Mm.
and games are on every screen you can find, really. So I think for me, it's just a matter of like supporting him coming on board, because this is my world and he is going to be a part of that, but also having those limitations on when too much time on video games is too much. At the moment, his attention span doesn't last that long anyway.
Yeah.
But when he does get older, that's something that I really want to knuckle down on. And I do have some advice. I see a lot of parents that have specifically had trouble with their kids in Fortnite.
Mm.
And for me, I once caught a taxi into the Wellington CBD, and this guy just happened to have a child who was going through like they were trying to find mental help for him because he was so addicted to Fortnite, and he was blaming the video game developers industry. And it was actually really like confronting conversation to have, because for me, um these poor parents, uh, they didn't know any better to educate themselves on video games and having these limits and really being disciplined to follow through with them. And it kind of results into this, this child that has no motivation for working, or going to school. And that's obviously what I want to avoid
Yeah.
going in the future, because that is an issue. Um, but yeah, no, it's just all about, for me, I just want to include my son in what I'm doing, and make the right steps so he can have a prosperous future.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting discussion about things being more gamified and different industries becoming more fun. It's like education is a big topic of conversation as well. Like
Yeah.
if a kid would rather play Fortnite than do his maths homework,
Yeah.
there's ways to integrate gaming mechanics inside of maths homework to make it more fun and engaging. And
Hmm.
I think there's definitely solutions to that. But I completely agree with what you're saying. And yeah, I think, yeah, it comes down to the discipline of the parents and making sure that there's a balance and teaching that discipline at a young age. Yeah, I would love to know if there's any like institutions in the, it could be not just in New Zealand, but in the world, like charity institutions that you really admire and support. Yeah, just I'd love to know what you kind of have on your in your view of people that you think are doing a good job of educating and helping out the people that need help.
Um, for me, I don't really know of too many, for concentrating on game addiction. I read all sorts of articles, but they don't really tend to attach like the name of these institutions or anything. So I'm not too sure there. But I do think that gaming, and there's so many apps out there as well that do gamify learning, which is really good. That really is the way of the technological future that we're seeing. And I do feel that, I think what we'll find is that schools, whether it's primary, intermediate, or high school and college, that they really need to look towards the future and really start to like bring the technology on board, and innovate in how they teach their students, because most of the teachers today, they grew up in a completely different world, completely different education system than what today actually needs. So I actually find that it's probably going to be like a really big issue, and a big hurdle for global, but New Zealand education to hurdle over.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you're in the perfect position as well, because anyone, I could think about solutions, I could think about things, but you have a child that's growing up and will have to sign up to these schools and see the curriculum. And so I think if anyone's in a position to find kind of solutions as Leon's growing up, I'm definitely going to keep an eye on what choices you make and what areas you go, because yeah, I think especially in the last year with a lot of schools being online because of COVID,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a lot of changes and questions being asked about how education could be done differently. So yeah, that is really interesting. Is a question I have. Do you think you'll go back to streaming once? Is streaming kind of in line with Chromatic Pi, or is that something that you're kind of putting on hold while you're focusing on the company?
So for me, I still earn a bit of money from streaming. I've got a fantastic community around me, and I I love it. And what I saw from being consistent on Twitch is that I had exponential growth for me. And so it was kind of hard to decide that that's not for me. I don't see myself being or wanting to be that popular streamer. That was me at a certain stage. But for me now, the income from Twitch, as I said, just isn't secure enough, especially with a child and being a solo parent as well.
Mm.
So for me, it was all about, going into an industry that I love and I'm passionate about, getting that financial security, but also streaming casually throughout. So um, I've had, a few months here and there where I hadn't streamed at all, but my goal is to stream at least once a week, but also upload videos to YouTube sporadically as well. I still love entertaining and like being with my community, so I don't think I'll ever completely cold turkey stop doing that.
No, that's cool, and I think that that's positioned perfectly. Like every game that gets released would love a community behind it, and the fact that that's one area that you are a step ahead already will make your whole process of releasing a game be different to every other studio that's just starting from zero. Um,
Yeah.
I wanted to bring up and congratulate you for being asked to be a judge at the PAVs.
Oh, thank you.
Happening in a few months, and there's a few questions I had around that. So you say you love to. I saw this a few places around the internet that you love playing on the hardest difficulty, and I
Yes.
just wanted to kind of question you on that and wonder, like, why? Like, what is your like, why the hardest difficulty? Why not just maybe medium hard, and then you always have that extra hard one?
Mm.
What's your logic behind that?
So when I initially started streaming games, and even before then, I would play my games on just like normal. I wouldn't go easy. I would just go normal every time. But I think I got to a point, especially this happened during streaming, of course, where I wanted to um, challenge myself, but have my community watch, and it made me feel vulnerable. But I knew that if my community saw my vulnerability and then saw me get better, and I overcame my vulnerability and got better, that was really gonna feel good, and they would enjoy like watching the process and stuff. But I think what it really came down to was just me wanting that like challenge stimulation. I'm someone that can't be like idle. I can't not be challenged in one way or another. I really like to learn and upskill and stuff. So for me, yeah, I just jumped in the deep end. And even to this day, if I play a new video game, for example, Ghost of Tsushima, I jumped in on the hardest difficulty, and it'll take me a few hours of dying and really trying to like learn the mechanics and when to dodge and when to parry. And so it's really, I'm very vulnerable during that stage, and new people might come in, they're like, oh, she's crap at this game, like why don't you lower the difficulty? But then like after a few hours, I'm fine, and I finish the game. And I love that. It's like this the learning curve like comes full circle, and it's just so rewarding.
Yeah, it's the hero. It's
I
the
love it.
hero's journey. It's you start off and you have to grow and learn skills. I think that's a great strategy. It's has has there ever been a game that you couldn't beat at the hardest difficulty?
Um, no. Actually,
Nice.
no. When I first started doing this, there would be games that I would rage quit. But I think the game that I rage quit was God of War 3. I can't remember when I first started playing. I think I rage quit 2016, and then I went to E3 in USA, and I sat in with Sony Santa Monica. They had this like private media sort of viewing of the new God of War that had just announced. And I went up to Corey Barlog, and I was like, hey, I'm playing God of War 3 on the hardest difficulty. I can't get past, oh gosh, I can't even remember their names, but there's like these spear people and the three-headed so dog thing.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, that part is really tough. And I'm like, yeah, I'm playing on the hardest difficulty. He's like, yep, that'll do it. And so it was only like I think it was 2 years later, and then I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna complete it before God of War, the next game, comes out. And I finally finished it. I finally
Oh,
did it.
that's
And
so
I was like,
cool. What a cool
yes.
story. That's awesome. So
And
going,
of course, I played God of War on the hardest difficulty, the latest one, and
yeah,
finished that. So it was
nice.
nice.
That'll be interesting. I'd love to know if there's Call of Duty for the Modern Warfare. The story for that, I spent so long in the last level because I was trying to get the full achievements for it on Xbox, and it wasn't finishing it that was hard. It was getting it under a certain time limit, and I remember doing
Oh,
that
right.
hundreds of thousands of times maybe, and eventually got it with a friend. It's always a good story when you beat something on the hardest difficulty.
Totally. Yeah, definitely.
So going back to the PAVs, for those that don't know, it's a games awards that happens during the New Zealand Games Festival, which is in April. There's a whole bunch of events happening that week, but the PAVs is a kind of a games award ceremony. So you've been asked to be a judge. Is the idea that you play all the games that are nominated and then you kind of give your vote? Um, do you know if that's how the structure is going to work?
Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I'm starting to play the games from this week onwards. I've got until the 14th of February um, before I have to hand in my judging and my nominees. And so there's these different categories, of course, that you have to place these games into. So this is my first time doing something like this. I really wanted to put myself out there and be like, hey, I think I can provide a unique perspective because I am more experienced in the game entertainment and consumer side of the industry. And now I've stepped into Endeavour. I was like, I should put myself forward for this. And I was really grateful that they decided that I would make a great fit. So first time, I'm going to see how it goes. I'm really excited to see all these video games, local video games, and play them. And yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can't wait to see that either. And a pro tip for anyone that's making a game for Lorien to play, to make it as hard as physically possible. And that's probably the one that Lorien will pick. Yeah, that's awesome. I'd love to know, is there any support that you need for Chromatic Pi that you'd love to kind of broadcast out there? Like any roles that you're interested in? You said you're looking for funding at the moment. Is there anything else that you can provide that might help someone that might be interested to reach out to you?
Well, you can go to chromaticpie.com and browse our website. There's a lot of information about our vision, our mission. There's a little bit about me on there as well. But we've also got an email on there, hello@chromaticpie.com, that you can email if you have any questions. But at the moment, because I'm making a 2D pixel platformer,
Cool.
so we'll be looking for a pixel artist, of course, a programmer, game designer, sound design, and whatnot. So there are going to be a few roles that will be open in the future, but my main priority at the moment is securing enough funding to get the prototype done, to hire people to get that made. So I'm making some progress in that area, but I guess for me, I just want to network within the business entrepreneurial side of New Zealand, which I've been dipping my toes in, and there is so much for me to learn there, about investing and all that sort of jazz. So if you have any advice for me, I'll take it on board, and I'd love to just have discussions about that sort of thing.
Awesome. No, there's definitely some good people in the industry, and I'm sure after this you'll get some people reaching out to support. And what I love about the New Zealand gaming industry is that everyone's so supportive. It's
Yeah.
like we're doing it all as a team to do it as a country and do the best for the gaming industry as a country. So that's really exciting, and I can't wait to see the kind of news that you start sharing about the game and when it's
Thank
nearing
you.
release. That's awesome. Yeah, so that's, I think, a pretty good chat. We're kind of running low on time, but I was wondering if I had one more question to ask you.
Mhm.
If someone was interested, because I feel like the most value that you can give is to the streaming community at the moment. If someone was wanting to start streaming, what advice would you give just to start off? Like, what's a reasonable goal just to begin streaming? And if you can speak to this climate as well with platforms, games, like what would you suggest? Say that you're starting streaming again this year. What would your strategy be?
For new and ambitious people wanting to break into the streaming space, I would say, first of all, you need I would recommend getting a computer that can run video games at least on medium graphic quality wise. So get yourself a decent GPU, get yourself a decent CPU as well, because you need to be able to like run the stream on your computer while you're playing a video game. I myself have two computers, so one's for streaming, one's for playing my video game, so it takes the heat off having it on just one, but you can do it on just one computer. I would recommend a good microphone as well. They're quite reasonably priced these days. Getting a good microphone, I would recommend anything from Blue. The microphone I'm using as well is Blue. It's actually quite affordable. Have a look on their website. But also make sure that your Twitch name, whatever platform you're streaming on, is something that you think you can market, is something that you can move forward with. A lot of people have their names and they've got numbers and whatnot in them, or they change them later down the line. So try and come up with something that's unique and something that really sets you apart and makes you more identifiable within the community. So once you've got all that together, I would say, just stick to a schedule that suits you. Make social medias surrounding your brand, interact with other communities around the same size as you. That's actually a really big thing. Try to play games with other content creators around your same size as well, and really just sort of network out and just show up for your community and have fun. Have a lot of fun.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's awesome advice. Thank you so much. If anyone wants to reach out to Lori or provide any business advice and investing advice for Chromatic Pi, or just wants to engage with the community, and if she pops up on Twitch to get involved in her community, you can follow her at LoriiPops. That's LoriiPops. I believe that's on Twitter, Twitch, and everywhere. Is that the same?
Everywhere, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, awesome. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I really appreciate you sharing your story and your advice. And I wish you the best for your journey this year. And I wish Leon the best as well, growing up in Wellington, and all the best for his future.
Oh, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be on your Zero to Play podcast. And I wish you the best too.
Thank you.
Hope this podcast takes off. You deserve it.
I appreciate it. We'll see how the year goes. All right. Thank you. Take care.
All right,
Bye.
thanks. Bye.